Hello everyone, this is Zeeebo. So welcome back to today's early to mid game seasonal Dream Realm boss guide for the different bosses, and we are at Long Gaze. As usual, I'll be doing the team recommendation on 3 different setups, 3 different accounts. Number 1 is my global server free to play account. Second one is my free to play PTR account, which is pretty similar to a light to mid spender account on the global server based on the unit investments. And then we have the meta teams, right? Meta mid game teams with my main account, where I showcase like the more developed units, the best units to tackle the boss if you want the best damage. So for Long Gaze itself, right, this boss I have talked about it quite a few times because it existed in a primal lot form. So the skill set didn't really change much, but the most important thing for this boss is surviving. Because once the boss starts killing off at least one unit, the boss will gain 20 haste as well as 20% physical and magical defense. So this thing will actually stack up, and the moment it starts to gain the first buff itself, the boss is pretty much unstoppable and it will start killing off the rest of the other units. So you want to keep all 5 units alive for as long as possible, and that is pretty much the key to team building for people with low investments as well. So without further ado, let's go into my free to play account. So this is the team setup. I think I don't need to explain too much as to what they do. I send in OD with Reyna's ability because I want to keep OD healthy all the time, and Reyna's heal is able to do that consistently. And then I run, I'll say, like 3 defensive unit in Torrent, Smokey and Coco, because Torrent can link and protect Reyna, right? Soak up some damage for Reyna. Smokey has insane heals with offensive prowess, and then we have Coco, which also has an insanely powerful ultimate and shielding ability as well. So if let's say, right, your Reyna is at a higher tier, you can consider not using Torrent and using Floorbell if you have her highly invested. So that's one option as well, because Floorbell has a lot of units which will sort of act as additional body to block out the wolf's attack. For my case, my Reyna is currently at Legend Plus, so I don't have the EX weapon, so no damage reduction as well as no increased damage on the boss. So for your case, if you don't have a Reyna at a good tier that can survive well, another unit I could suggest is using the likes of Hewin, because Hewin has insane heal potential, and if your Hewin is at least Mythic Plus, your Hewin will have the EX weapon ability, which allows you to grant damage reduction on all allies when she casts the ultimate. So whenever Hewin is using the ultimate, none of your units will die, and at the same time, because of her seasonal skill, she's able to buff up OD because I'm only running a single carry, so OD will be able to sort of deal a little bit more damage based on the buff from Smokey as well as the buff from Hewin. However, the disadvantage of this build is I'll say quite obvious, because you're losing quite a bit on the fractional bonus. This only gives you 10%, while the Reyna one gives you up to 19%, so that's a 9% attack and HP difference. So depending on your personal situation, you can make the switch. I don't recommend double core, I don't recommend double carries, because having double carries is only good if you can survive, right? Against this boss, survival is quite important because you don't want the boss to ramp up in damage. So I did rather run more defensive units for me to survive longer, for my OD to jam in more damage. So I'll showcase the 2 builds and the difference in terms of the damage output so that you guys can see the difference. So for this account, as you guys can see, not a lot of options, so Starshot spell will be the best for bossing. And with that, I'm going to showcase the Reyna build first, and then showcase the damage comparison, and then I'll showcase the Hewin build. So another unit that you guys can use in the place of Reyna is obviously Damien, because Damien also offers heal, and Damien offers an additional body to block out some of the wolves attack that you guys can see right now. But for Damien's case, I think Damien's offensive buff is only at the EX weapon skill, and I'm not very sure whether or not there's a lot of free-to-play players who have invested Damien to that tier, so that's why I don't recommend it. For Hewin's case, you might not even need the mythic weapon because Hewin's heal is quite big. So when you have Coco and Smokey already invested, the additional heals coming out from Hewin is more than enough to keep your team alive. So the idea of Hewin in the position of Reyna is to keep your team alive. She need not have Mythic Plus, but it will be better with her at Mythic Plus because the damage reduction will be helpful in keeping all your units alive. So that's for Hewin's case. Okay, you guys can see over here, I I don't think I can beat the boss, but we might be on our way to beat our personal record in terms of like RNG. So against this boss, there's a little bit of RNG, as you guys can see. Smokey still died pretty early, but it's towards the end of the boss run, so it doesn't really affect our overall damage. Overall, we did this amount of damage, 374 million. So damage distribution, with OD being the primary carry. Okay, so this is with Reina with a lot more stats buff. Next, I'm going to showcase the run with Hewin. Okay, so for Hewin's case, I'm gonna put Hewin at the back because my Hewin is pretty stacked up. It's Supreme with EX Weapon 5, so I don't have the Supreme Plus skill, which is the additional haste, but with the Scissor skill, that should be enough offensive buff for OD to sort of, I'll say, like, keep up with the damage output when you are using Reina. So for Reina's case, I think you might have some issue with keeping some units alive if you don't have them highly invested. But for Hewin's case, you are losing a little bit of offensive firepower in terms of the stats, but you are guaranteeing your team to survive for as long as possible. So that's the trade-off from there. So you guys can see there's quite a lot of buff from OD. So there's actually two types of buff, which is the attack and the haste buff coming up from the seasonal skill from both Smokey as well as Hewin. So you guys will see like multiple buffs of the same icon on OD over here because of that. So you guys can see, right, when Hewin is using the ultimate, none of my units are dying. So the goal of switching in Hewin is to keep your team alive so that you don't get sniped off. It increases the stability for your damage at the cost of maybe a little bit of damage, because Reina does offer a little bit more offensive power from the factional side of things. So damage output still looking pretty decent. All my units still alive. Okay, so just now was 374 million. We are pretty close. This is about 355 million, right? 356. So pretty close there. So when you think about that, when you lose about 9% stats, that's quite good. So here you guys can see OD doing a fair amount of damage because of the double buffs from Hewin's seasonal skill, right, as well as Smokey's seasonal skill over here. So this is because I'm running a single core strategy. So hyper buffing my OD allows me to do good enough damage to keep up with the Reina build as well. So that's for the free-to-play account. Let's move on to my PTR free-to-play account. Let's go. Okay, so now we are on the free-to-play PTR account, which is on the difficult stage. For this account, I'll say it mimics that more of a light to mid spender range where you are able to spend on the game and you have slightly better unit qualities. So for this run itself, right, there's actually two variants which I run. So number one is the placement just now, which is OD, Coco, as well as Smokey. So let me find my Smokey. Yeah, Smokey's here. And then we have Coco here. Okay, so Coco on this account is currently not at Mythic Plus, really close to Mythic Plus, but because she's not at Mythic Plus, I'm not getting the additional shield, so I have some issues surviving without Coco's additional shield. So in this case, I actually run Antandra to provide the additional shield for Smokey, because Smokey will be a very important point to heal my units up, while at the same time Antandra being a pretty tanky unit with the EX weapon skill, which provides this damage reduction on one of the guarded allies, which is very helpful. When any of your units falls really low, she will come to their aid, giving them additional damage reduction and protecting them for a little bit longer. So this build itself has a 4 unit fractional bonus because you're running 4 Maulers, and I'm running the quick wit spell for the most defensive stats while providing additional offensive power. So you can also run the evocation spell based on your personal survival. If your units can survive better, if your units are at a higher tier, you can definitely use evocation spell for a little bit more damage, because overall I think evocation spell offers a little bit more offensive prowess over a longer period of time, but it doesn't matter if your units die off before you run through the full cycle of this spell itself. So I use a quick wit spell because it offers more stability compared to evocation, but evocation is really good if you can survive, if your units are at a higher level compared to mine, or if your Coco has EX weapon and you already have additional shield, so evocation will definitely be slightly better. So for this one, I'll showcase the quick wit spell variant, and let's start the battle. So right here, as you guys can see, because my Smokey is placed on the very front, she will be shielded by Aldir and Tendra. So this additional shield will keep Smokey alive for as long as possible, and because my Smokey is at least EX10, which means that his heal is quite substantial, keeping him alive to pivot the survival of my team is really important. And then for OD's case, I link OD to Torrent to soak some damage, because this unit is my key carry, which means that I need to keep this unit alive for me to do as much damage as possible. So some of you guys might be wondering why I'm not running the Crescent spell. The reason why Crescent spell is not so good against the boss is because the boss likes to teleport around, and the boss is always hiding in the mist, which will reduce the efficiency of Crescent spell when you fight against this boss specifically. So that's why I don't use Crescent spell. So evocation as well as quick blade will be more consistent. One, I'll say synergy that quick blade have with the team is that there's a physical defense reduction, even though it doesn't benefit OD in terms of dealing more damage, but it benefits Torrent when Torrent use the counter Q attack. So you guys can see over here, we did 1.3 build, right? So this is the damage distribution. Okay, so we are on the final account, and for this account itself, right, we are doing 10.7 build, but this account is pretty stacked up in terms of the units, and we are running a Satrana comp with the full Mauler faction. So I did a few runs with this team itself. I'll say if you're able to luck out in terms of the RNG factor, if you're able to survive the full duration, the damage output from OD, the damage output from Crescent spell, when further buffed up by the abilities of Satrana, right, with the ignite ability as well as the seasonal skill itself, this means that you're able to hit more damage. But the thing is, there's some issue with survival. So let's say, right, if you are not able to survive as well, what I'll suggest is linking OD to Torrent and then providing this additional support for OD. So this way, right, you are omitting the weak spot, which is Reyna, because in this build itself, I will showcase one run. So this build will ensure maximum damage, but at the same time, Reyna is quite frail. Like based on my testing, Reyna dies quite a bit. So if you want to better have a more stable damage, then this one is probably a little bit better, right? So I'll showcase two builds together so you guys can see the damage difference. So this is the original placement. So Crescent spell will be boosted by Satrana, and OD will be boosted by Crescent spell debuff as well as Satrana's magic damage up as well. So this is a full mage team with the 5 Mauler tech, but there's a little bit of RNG in terms of Reyna surviving. So we can only pray that Reyna survive until the end so that we can see the max damage cap. Okay, so I will not comment it too much. I'm just praying that Reyna survives so I can show you guys the 10.7 build damage on this account. Okay, so right here, one thing that Satrana has going for her is that her ultimate is invulnerability, which keeps her healthy, and you can heal her up with the likes of Smokey as well as Coco. But as you guys can see, once Reyna starts to fall, the boss starts to hit a little bit harder, and then the other unit starts to lose more HP. So Reyna is quite a weak spot based on my testing right here. So the second ultimate is probably going to kill off one more unit. I hope all units can survive, and then hopefully we get the 10 build damage. So if Reyna had not died there, I think 10.7 build is definitely achievable. So this is with Reyna, full Mauler right here. Okay, so this is the damage distribution. Next, let's move on to the one with Torrent. So I think Torrent also does the same thing in terms of debuff, but Torrent has these additional benefit to protect one unit. So you want to protect your carry, and Satrana doesn't need much protection because she has damage reduction herself, and her ultimate keeps her healthy with all the heals and inbound. So with that, let us start this run. Okay, one thing I forgot to change out is the levels of Torrent, but I don't think it matters that much in terms of just showing the team itself. Okay, so the best damage that was achieved on this account was the previous view, where Reyna was able to survive for a little bit longer for the 10.7 build damage. But if you want more consistency, if your Reyna dies off way too easily, or if your Reina is not as Supreme Plus, then I'll recommend this build, because I think most people will have Torrent at a higher tier, so Torrent will definitely be able to survive for a little bit longer. That is provided if you have Citrana invested. If you don't have Citrana invested, I think Reina Torrent will still be your better option, but if you don't have Reina invested, then use the Antandra build, which I recommend just now as well. So you guys can see the damage is quite close. I don't think it's gonna achieve the 10.7 build, but I think 10 build should be quite achievable with what we have. So right here, everybody's still alive, and yeah, we are about 10.2 build, 10.2, 10.3. Okay, so 10.2 build. So this team is more consistent in survival, but I'll say the damage output overall is a little bit lower. So this is the damage distribution. Okay, so that's pretty much it for this build, right? This is the end game build, or the meta mid game build, based on the best units we have at the current levels that we are at. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do remember to like and subscribe to see more. I'll see you guys again in my next video. Bye guys.